And I'm Ellen Zwornstein. I get to be your facilitator for this session. I'm the executive director at the Michigan Center for Civic Education, which oversees the We the People program in that state. So without further ado, your judges will introduce themselves. They'll ask you to introduce yourselves, and then we'll begin with the hearing. Best wishes.
Hello, folks. Good to see you all from New York. I am Hank Chambers down at the University of Richmond. I'm a law professor down here, and I've done We the People for a long, long time, since before any of you youngsters were born, and that's good. We'll have a good conversation this afternoon, and we'll have our two other judges introduce themselves before you introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Zinkin. I'm a Supreme Court law clerk in New Hampshire. I have been here for about 21 years. Prior to that, I litigated employment cases in San Francisco. I come from a long line of family in New York, all in the Queens and Long Island area. And I've been judging at the state level for somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And this is my first time at nationals. Very much looking forward to our conversation.
And good afternoon, I should say. I'm Barry Anderson. I'm an Associate Justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. I'm actually the Senior Justice on the court, which means nothing. It means I just happen to hang around for a long time. In addition to judging at the national competition for many, many years, I've also had the privilege of going way back, more than 2 decades ago, of serving as an assistant coach for a team that made the national tournament on several occasions. So I fully understand all the work you've done, all the stress you've encountered, and here you are with some more off-the-wall questions from judges. But we're going to have a great conversation, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So let's have at it.
All right, so tell us who you all are.
Hi, my name is Richard Barney.
Hello, my name is Hunter Dello.
Hello, my name is Matthew Shoemaker, and our teacher is Mr. Berner.
I just want to say thank you guys for volunteering your time on a Sunday. I greatly appreciate it. And just to let you know, we're from the other side of New York State. As far west of New York, you can go right on Lake Erie.
Oh, awesome.
We appreciate the thank you. We all think this is a great time, which may say something about us, but we're delighted to be here.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So I will read question 2, and then we will be ready for your opening statement. So, members of Congress are not only legislators, but they are also inquisitorial and should meet frequently to inspect the conduct of the public officers. How effectively do you believe Congress has used its investigatory power? Explain the differences, if any, between Congress's power to investigate and the power of oversight. Which power, in your opinion, is more significant? How effectively do you believe Congress has used its oversight powers? We're ready for your opening statement.
The powers to investigate and oversee are implied powers given to the Congress under its ability to possess all legislative powers. This is provided in Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, which states that all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a House of Representatives and a Senate. Considering the Founding Fathers neither granted nor withheld these powers, this is why they are deemed implied. Given these abilities, it adds validity to the argument that our legislators should meet often and inspect the conduction of public officials. The Supreme Court stated that the framers intended for Congress to seek out information when crafting or reviewing legislation. This coincides with the fact that the framers assumed that Congress would conduct investigations because the British House of Commons did as well.
The Challenger disaster in 1986 is a great example of Congress's effective use of investigations. Congress set up a special investigative commission, the Rogers Commission, in order to examine the explosion and why it occurred. Even though this event was a tragedy in modern history, it aided to the discovery of deadly flaws and helped create new advancements in the safety and construction of future rockets. This, as well as many other examples, such as the tragic events of 9/11, showed the capabilities of Congress's use of its investigative powers and how they can be used effectively to push for reform.
The power of congressional oversight, also implied in the Constitution, grants Congress another opportunity to check the executive branch of government by administering, monitoring, and reviewing its legislation. The power of congressional oversight is used in 3 methods, which include appropriations in legislative committees, legislative vetoes, and congressional investigations. Bureaucracies are created for instances when Congress has broad implementations on specific areas, giving its power to different agencies with more knowledge on the topic. For example, the Food and Drug Administration. The quasi-legislative powers created by these agencies form policies and regulations through their knowledge, making it less extensive than the vast congressional mandates.
A recent weakness of the congressional oversight power can be seen in the court cases Trump v. Mazars and Trump v. Vance. The leading events to these cases were brought about when a subpoena was issued for Trump to show his financial records, but the Trump administration was able to prevent Congress from viewing these records. In the court case Trump v. Vance, the ruling stated that the president is not categorically immune from state criminal subpoenas, showing how everyone is held equally under the law. This ruling, however, was overturned in the court case Trump v. Mazars, which stated that the courts had not sufficiently considered the weighty separation of power and concerns specifically implicated by congressional subpoenas.
Congress's power to investigate inevitably serves a greater role than the power of congressional oversight. When an investigation is opened up by Congress, the president, for example, though it may be difficult, can be compelled to hand over evidence that could aid the investigation. A good example of this is the Watergate scandal. The investigative power creates a sort of checks and balances for whatever body is being investigated, which allows the framers to reason with the Constitution and helps prevent one branch of the government from becoming too powerful. However, when Congress uses the oversight power, it's meant for the discovery and prevention of bureaucracies trying to solve the issue before a problem arises. So the power to investigate relies on Congress's oversight not being 2020.
In the end, Congress was given these powers as a way of promoting the common good and supporting the well-being of our nation. Whether the government creates a bureaucracy to oversee a specific area or they start an investigation when a perceived issue cannot be solved preemptively, the main focus is protecting the nation and its interests. As Thomas Jefferson stated in the Declaration of Independence, the main purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you very much. Question for you. Why was Congress the best place to do the Challenger investigation rather than NASA?
Because as we see an example of, say, in recent, I believe, year or two, when Boeing had an issue of their planes going down, we don't want another instance where Boeing is able to investigate themselves and try and figure out what happened because of biases and other issues of the sort. So when we had the Challenger disaster, it was a better idea for the Rogers Commission to come out and investigate what happened, because we don't want NASA to investigate themselves and then potentially not fix the issue or push it to the side so that we potentially harm future individuals.
Is NASA's role a little bit different than Boeing? Because Boeing's a private company and NASA's a part of the government already. So is there some distinction between those two and what they would want to do with an investigation?
Well, in the end, it's both. Both companies are affecting the well-being of the people that are aboard either the rocket or the airplanes. So in the end, these investigations are trying to figure out what's the best way to create either a regulation or a new policy to help the well-being of the people that are involved with the issue.
Okay. Justice Anderson, what are you thinking?
So there's an argument that's been made that Congress, by ceding to the executive and judicial branches some of its powers, has greatly weakened its investigative and other kinds of powers to determine what might be going wrong, as in the example you cited. Assuming that's the case, you don't have to agree with me, but assuming that's the case, how does Congress go about recovering its executive from the executive and judicial branches, the powers that it's given them?
So we see investigative powers occurring after problems have occurred, such as like horrific examples of 9/11. And with these investigative powers, we have brought up about different, like the National Security Agency have brought about different programs to help out in preventing these problems using congressional oversight. So the National Security Agency has brought out PRISM, which is a program that tracks and collects metadata from different communication companies. And these communication companies can give the government the information on people that they request. And also there's other programs like the Magic Lantern, which is a software program on how it records keystrokes of people who are using it, and it also records web search history and usernames and passwords. And then the Bull Run program is a program that has encryption codes, and the government is really, the National Security Agency is related into this. So they are able to really dig in and investigate or use oversight to prevent more problems to occur. And the director of the NSA has stated that the programs have prevented over 50 terrorist attacks from 9/11.
And after
But
9/11,
my question is, what institutional changes should Congress make to recover powers that it's given to the other two branches? And to put it another way, how does Congress become a more effective investigative agency, for example?
Well, we see with, say, with the issues of 9/11 and the Patriot Act, these are examples of Congress's investigative power really shining through and creating an act to try and help protect the nation and its well-being. Because this was at a time when the United States was not really into surveillance of the people and surrounding areas, because we never really had an issue with terrorism foreign terrorism other than with Pearl Harbor. So when you look at the issues with Congress's ability to investigate / oversee, it's a tough question to answer what kind of resolutions can be made, because it is up to the investigative power to decide how they want to move forward so that they can eventually benefit the oversight power.
and after 9/11, Congress obviously became more cautious with their power to oversight. And this is very important. However, I would still say that it is still failing. As we can see, it did not prevent the Boston bombing or the underwear bomber or the shoe bomber from happening. So obviously, we still need Congress to boost this oversight power a little more.
Okay, thanks.
What are some examples that you can give us of investigations that were ineffective? You gave us some examples of investigations that were effective, but I'm wondering about ineffective investigations and what made them ineffective.
Well, with 9/11, it was originally ineffective because the CIA and the FBI were not sharing information, which is why it took a longer amount of time to solve the investigation. Overall, the investigation wasn't unsuccessful, but if Congress didn't uncover that they weren't sharing information, this investigation might not have been solved.
So what makes the investigation effective is if it solves the problem?
Well, it's not that if it solves the problem entirely, it's that it creates more of a shield for the oversight power to then mitigate the need for the investigative power.
Gotcha. I'm curious. Can you tell me what you all meant when you were talking about the legislative veto? Because my impression that the legislative veto has been deemed unconstitutional for a while. So what were you guys talking about?
Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, case INS versus Chowder from back in 1981, legislative veto was found unconstitutional. So I'm just trying to figure out what type. It may be that you're talking about a different style of legislative veto. I just wanted to see what you were talking about in terms of what you mean by legislative veto.
Well, it's just a way for Congress to use their their congressional oversight to either prevent an issue before it happens, or to even if an issue does happen, it's a way for Congress to possibly stop the issue so that we don't have to go into the investigative power.
Okay. Can Congress effectively provide oversight for all of government, or is government simply too large for Congress to provide oversight for the entire government?
Well,
this is
Congress itself cannot do this. That is why they create these many bureaucracies in order to try their best to watch over everything. We've seen with the meatpacking industry and the book known as The Jungle by Harry Sinclair, he discovered and mentioned, and he wrote down in his book the injustices that were occurring in the meatpacking industry, where they were basically contaminating our food and it was not very healthy to consume.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So judges, comments?
I thought, I enjoyed your statement, and I thought this is something I don't normally comment on this, but we're getting near the end of it, and I'll just say it. We had not heard of the Challenger investigation, and that is a really good example of an effective investigation that we don't often hear about. And so I thought that was a very useful contemporary example. My question was not a model of clarity, and I apologize for that. I've been struggling a little bit with the formation of it, but I do think that there's an issue here about the way in which Congress and the other two branches interact in terms of what powers, the Congress is the Article 1 of the Constitution. I mean, the most important article of the Constitution is the power given to Congress, and Congress has been willing to give power away to the judiciary and to the executive branch. And I think that that's a factor in the ineffectiveness of its, the way its subpoena powers are handled, for example, or giving executive agencies broad discretion and not insisting even on reporting back to the Article 1 branch. So, I think there are issues there in terms of the way that separation of powers is handled. That we maybe could have gotten into in a little greater detail, but that may be the fault of the question too, as much as anything else. I thought I thought it was a great statement, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also enjoyed the conversation. I thought your opening statement was solid. I liked your use of Supreme Court precedent. I thought you demonstrated solid depth of knowledge. One of the things I appreciated about your opening statement was that it was very well organized. So thank you very much for your hard work, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree. The beginning in terms of trying to lay out a distinction between power of investigation and power of oversight was good stuff. The notion that it was implied from legislative powers in general was positive stuff. The reason why we jumped into the Challenger piece of the puzzle is it's an interesting example to use because it did bring about a good result, but the idea of Congress looking at a technical issue kind of gives me the willies. So that's the reason why I asked y'all about it, and it was good stuff in terms of your response. The reason why I asked about the legislative veto is I think it may well be that you're thinking about a legislative veto as meaning something different from what some other folks think about a legislative veto as being. So that's why I wanted to ask you for that distinction, just to make sure that we got a little clear on that. But you guys have done a lot of work, and you've worked a lot. You work very hard. So I hope you good fortune for the rest of the day, and we'll see what happens tonight. So y'all take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, students, you can stay here for just a moment. Judges, if you could please click on breakout room and join the breakout room.
Thank you very much for your time.